church believes heaven and hell are real places. And guess which one you're going to if you keep this up.
I don't know how we can fix a world where people have been so convinced that they are doing the right thing out of compassion and love and trying to help people when it is absolute poison, when it is absolutely destructive.
Now who's the one that is responsible for how the world is? Who's the one that is responsible for how we all live? Takes the negative influences and poisons all the kids, so they just repeat the stupid shit that you and I did. Who's the species that wallows in this puddle of mud? Who's the one that painted the planet?
Welcome all ye apostates. I've got some good news this week. It's a bit of a long episode, but an amazing interview with an incredible artist. I featured him last week, and this week again, I have Tombstone Da Deadman. Listen to it, you will enjoy it. Next week, my co-host will be with us. We are working on our first conversation with some of the audio issues, and so that'll be on for you next week. Have a good time. And
it's partially the reason we bleed in the all poison. Your worldview is poison. Your outlook is poison. Denied all you want, but the truth is it's all poison.
Because I'm very much a skeptic. I'm more of a skeptic than I am an atheist. I mean, atheist is a conclusion based on my skepticism.
You'll have to come like a little child to the foot of the cross.
That attitude is what is responsible for the rise of atheism.
That's not what Islam is all about. Islam is peace.
What is the penalty for leaving the Muslim faith? With the death penalty. Thank you.
This is Apostasy Now.
For people to get the information correct before they start yapping.
Get ready to root for the bad guys.
Begins with E, evidence. All the evidence.
How are you doing?
Pretty good.
I've been looking forward to this all week.
Oh, cool.
So, where are you from, and how'd you get started?
Okay, I was born and raised in Baltimore City, Maryland. Basically, I've been rapping and making music since I was like 13 years old. It's funny because one of the guys that had actually inspired me to start making music did the most simplistic, as far as content-wise, songs ever. But at that time, that's what it was, Dougie Fresh. I was a huge fan of the rapper Dougie Fresh back in the day. And a lot of his subject matters dealt, around partying and other things like that. Yeah. But it was just, I don't know, maybe it was his cadence or, maybe it was the way his voice sounded over the hip-hop instrumentals. But he really inspired me to think about rapping. And then a friend of mine dared me to do it, said, basically asserted that I couldn't do it. And, at least back then when I was a kid, if you dared me to do something and said I couldn't do it, I just had to take up that challenge. So I was like, challenge accepted. And I started doing it, and I liked it. And I've been doing it pretty much ever since, with varying, various degrees of success. But yeah.
Yeah, that's a young age.
Yeah.
This is definitely a passion. I have to tell you, when I grew up, I was introduced to rap through Run DMC. Yeah, my cousin gave it to me. My background's Mennonite, modern Mennonite, right? So there was nothing like rap. I remember the first time I heard the album, I remember I kept asking him, "What is this?" The second time I heard it, I was in love.
Yeah. I know the feeling, man. I mean, there's something about it. I think for me, it's the fact that in most cases, well, in the best case scenarios, it's so lyric focused. Well, you can really express a point and for it to be heard. Provided there's a couple of caveats there. You have some rappers that rhyme so fast that you can't pick up what they're saying. But for the most part, especially when I really started getting into it, it was really about what the person was actually saying. You could pick it out. I remember the girls used to write the lyrics down and memorize them, their favorite rap song, and do them like as as little cheerleading cheers. That's how focused it was on the lyrics, you know.
Yeah, it's an incredible art form. The thing that really caught me about you, like, it's been with all kinds of music, I've kind of drifted away for the most part. When I heard your lyrics on that video, though, it immediately tapped into that side of me that, you know, there used to be a couple of people when I was younger, like you say, it was the lyrics. It wasn't just the style, it was also the content of what they were saying. And it's been a long time since somebody's grabbed me like that. Like, your content is significant.
Thanks, man. You know, I'm just rapping about basically what I feel. You know, when I was younger, I spent time rhyming about, you know, the more common themes in rap, just like, you know, most rappers. But I don't know, maybe about, I would say 2009, I started a YouTube channel called Rational Warrior. And I got tagged in by another YouTuber to make a video showcasing any talent or skills that I had. So I wrote a song basically about atheism, and a lot of people liked it. And you know, so I started doing more of them. And a huge YouTuber with a lot of subscribers, Dark Matter 2525.
Yeah,
he used one of my songs as a backdrop for one of his videos. And I jumped from having, I think at that time I had 150 subscribers. I jumped from 150 subscribers to about 5,000.
Wow.
in maybe less than a week. And it's been a steady stream. Then after that, I did another song called Poison. And Matt Dillhunty, one of my fans, shared the song with him because I sampled a portion of the dialogue from one of their shows. And he played it on the Atheist Experience.
Nice.
Yeah, and it got a lot of views, and I got even more subscribers. So eventually it led up to David Silverman from American Atheists. He contacted me about performing at the Reason Rally. So I was like, I don't think I can turn that down.
Yeah.
So, you know, I went out there and I did 2 songs, and it had got a really good response from people. And you know, it's been kind of a whirlwind because I'm an older MC. I'm not one of these kids. You know, I've been doing this since I was 13. I've turned 44 this year.
Oh.
So the fact that I started getting any attention for my music at the age I am now, which is this particular genre is a young man's game for real, is startling to me. I'm startled by it every day, the fan mail I get and stuff like that. Like, really?
I think people are really looking for what you're offering. I know it for you, it's probably what you're feeling and what you're thinking, but for on a larger scale, it's difficult to find people that are thinking that. In the industry, right?
Yeah, because I mean, every time you turn around, if you watch any of the award shows, which I avoid like the plague, but if you watch any of the award shows, these artists will get up there and the first thing comes out of their mouth, I would like to thank God, you know. And it's, you know, I think too, you make a good point because about the fact that people are kind of zoning in on the stuff I'm talking about, because the atheists, I hate to use the term community, but most atheists are maligned for their position.
Yeah,
we are told that we are the scum of the earth, baby eaters. All right, we're told, you know, we're basically judged by a standard that is just it's not true, you know. And people are usually arguing against the straw man perception of what we are. So to hear somebody reaffirm and take a strong position on something and try to use it, say it in a positive light. You know what I mean? I think that's probably what the appeal is. But I just think more of us need to actually do that. I think more of us need to come out with that, because what happens is if you don't frame a narrative about yourself, the people who are your enemies will frame a narrative about you.
If you're going to remain silent, then other people will fill in the blanks, or or they'll even pretend you're not even there.
Yeah.
I don't know which one's worse.
Right. Right.
With me, I could go open. I could tell people openly, so I sort of should because, some people, they have occupational situations or family situations where it's not as easy for them.
Right.
Yeah. And obviously, some parts of the world, people get killed for
yeah.
for speaking their mind.
Really. Yeah. I mean, it's a thing of, well, I know from the type of stuff that I talk about in my songs at times, I know it's going to close certain opportunities to me. I accept that, and I deal with that because I put my art really before the financial part of it. Like I wouldn't feel right making money off of saying things that I didn't truly, accept as my truth. So, I've decided to make a conscious decision that if anybody doesn't want to work with me because I'm an atheist, then I don't want to work with you.
That's right.
That's how I feel about it. I mean, it's a thing of, at some point, we have to make a stand in pretty much every type of genre of life or position in life. If you think a certain way, you don't have to be a dick. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to be a dick, but there's a way to express your viewpoint.
Yeah.
And to do it in an authoritative way, and without sounding like you're apologizing for feeling that way, without coming off as a jerk. You know what I'm saying? Like, so, of course, in rap, one of the key elements is to come off as a jerk. So yeah, if you hear some of my rhymes, some of the stuff I say in the rhymes, it's hyperbole. You know what I mean? But when I have those type of conversations with a theist on Facebook or other social websites, I don't come off like that, because I found that when you insult people in the process of you trying to talk to them, they close their minds to what you're saying. You know what I mean? They instantly just like stop listening to your argument and focus in on the fact he called me a dumbass. See, now it's not really productive for the conversation. And they might not, of course, no one's going to change anybody's opinion about something that they spent their entire life having been taught the religious principles and stuff as a child. But even with me, certain conversations I had with friends of mine that came out as atheists. You know what I mean? It didn't change anything right there, but it did give me food for thought.
Yeah.
That later on, it was like sleeper cells. Like later on, something would happen that would bring to mind what they said to me and go, oh, that's what he was talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So your background, tell me a little bit about that as far as your religious upbringing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was raised Pentecostal.
Okay.
One of the most scariest things for a child ever is to sit in a Pentecostal church and watch a woman that is tipping the scales of maybe 300 pounds going into what appears to be an epileptic fit, speaking in tongues. It was the most horrifying thing ever. When I got I always questioned, though. Like, I was a believer. I was a staunch believer, but some things really just didn't make sense to me. And I would try to silence my mind of those questions, because once you're taught that there's somebody always listening to your thoughts, that's always watching what you're doing, it can be really stressful if you're somebody really trying to figure out these inconsistencies, but you still believe. And you're trying to even measure your thoughts so that they're not disrespectful.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah.
So once I got, I think about 16 or so, I really started looking into other religious, but it was all under the umbrella of Christianity. But the other denominations under Christianity, I started just looking at them and seeing what they were saying and everything. And it got to a point where it's just, a lot of the questions that I had were either not being answered in a forthright way, or I was being told I was wrong for even questioning it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I eventually left Christianity and converted over to Islam.
Oh, wow. That I didn't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Thinking that, because it's a PR thing in the United States. it's a PR thing in the black community with Muslims. They have great public relations, and it's this perception that they are, more informed than Christian about things in general, politics, religion. That they it's this perception that they're on the ball about this stuff. Well, I got to tell you, it's just a perception. Because when I was a Muslim for like maybe 10 years, and eventually it happened the exact same way it happened with Christianity. There are certain things you guys are telling me that are inconsistent with other things you're telling me. But when I question you about it, I'm either told I'm wrong for questioning, or I'm not getting a straightforward answer that's satisfying and convincing. And at some point I said to myself, you know what? I'm not giving anybody the benefit of the doubt anymore. Because that's really what was happening. Yeah. Same with Christianity. You're giving the pastor the benefit of the doubt. You're giving grandma the benefit of the doubt. You're giving your mother and whatever other adult that's in your life as a child the benefit of the doubt that they know what the hell they're talking about.
Yep.
And I stopped doing that. And once I made that conscious decision, like, you know what, dude, I'm just not giving you the benefit of the doubt anymore. You're not just going to tell me something without any evidence or anything that backs it up from a legitimate source, and I'm going to accept it. And once I started thinking like that, atheism was the next step, because I moved from a position of thinking I knew something to saying to myself, I don't know shit. So if you're making this claim, I'm going to ask you to prove it, much the same way the scientists have to prove the stuff they say. They have to have evidence for it. You're going to have evidence. You're not just going to come to me and say, Jesus died on the cross for my sins, or you're not going to come to me and say that Muhammad pointed to the moon and it cracked in half. Dude, you're not going to be able to say that shit to me unless you can present to me some evidence and make it a rational, coherent thought, and not use emotional blackmail, not use what may apparently seem to be the popular view and go, well, everyone knows this. No, everyone doesn't know that. Everyone says that.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that they know what they're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the word that we're looking for is disbelief. They launch attacks on disbelief, any kind of doubt.
Yeah.
Now are you tired of all the lies that disguised by faith dabblers, fallacious claim makers, the faker, the snake handlers, mad at us cause we ask the questions to straight dismantle her, intellectually weak and they piss they can't handle us. It's kind of funny how they always quick to throw it harmonious, when all the wisdom of Solomon ain't enough for calming them. Your lack of belief is just like a bomb to them, so every time you ask them for proof it's just bringing harm to them. So now I must be Lucifer, cause I don't see no truth in you, and every piece of data that's discovered is disproving you. So now I'm just assuming you rather have somebody preaching to you when they treat you like a child the whole time that they speaking to you. Must have really have to go there and insult your intelligence before you understand your Bible quotes are not relevant to any of our topics when discussing the facts. Man, fuck that. Bring some evidence and don't you come back. You don't really want us here, let's be totally honest. That's why you wishing death and destruction upon us. But I'ma keep on doing this to you regardless. See, I don't believe you cause your mind is so tarnished. You don't really want us here, let's be totally honest. That's why you wishing death and destruction upon us. But I'ma keep on doing this to you regardless. See, I don't believe you cause your mind is so tarnished.
They start ingraining that into you right away and anticipating your common inclination towards wanting to know why. Question why. Or how do we know? Don't question. Don't think. Yeah. And God's listening to your thoughts, so think the right thing.
Be careful. It's right. It's a thought police.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I don't try to indoctrinate my kids into anything. I would much rather prefer to teach them how to think instead of what to think.
Right. I have a little one myself, and my wife is still a believer.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had this discussion, so I've had to really think about it. Yeah, where do you fall on the idea of like the difference? I know that you're not going to, indoctrinate your children, but what about the idea of them being introduced in some way to what religion is, in some passing sense at least? Like, how do you think about?
I'm actually for that. I think just going off of some of the interactions I've had with other atheists who have never been religious, a lot of them, that I've met and talked to, they lack a certain understanding of that mindset. And I think really when it comes to having this discussion, you kind of need to understand where the other side is coming from in order to effectively respond to them. So I have no problem with my kids learning anything about these other religious things, but before they get introduced to that, what I have done is, like, me and my wife we got logical fallacy books, teaching them how to think critically, so that when these claims are thrust upon them, it becomes like a reflex. When they hear something, it's like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Like, what evidence is there to back up that claim you just made there? And I think that's a far better way than me just imposing, my 44 years of experience in their little brains. I would much rather them come to those conclusions on themselves, because in many cases, it's not what you know, it's how you know it.
Generally speaking, that's what I find is more common with non-believers, like atheists and skeptics. I think most of us feel that it's our job to help them, like you say, have the tools as they grow, rather than the content being like ours.
Right, exactly. I think it's important because the world that we live in, and it's been this way for a while, is full of people that are trying to either lie to you outright or have been lied to themselves and are spreading the lie around.
Yeah.
And the best tool, the best gift you could give your children is the tool of being able to think critically and actually look at claims and really examine whether or not the claim has merit. And this goes beyond just religion, because in politics, these people stay making assertions, stay saying things that are either half true or outright false. Even in relationships, growing up as a child, you become a teenager and you get in relationships with other people. Even in those type of situations, being a critical thinker definitely helps. So I just think it's just that in itself is one of the best tools you could ever give your child.
Yeah, absolutely. Critical reasoning isn't just going to help them when it comes to the idea of whether they're going to buy into a religion or not. It's gonna help them in every walk of life,
every aspect of their life, and it's important, man. I think too. I mean, if you look at just in the United States, there are roughly 300 million of us.
Yep.
And unfortunately, well, it's a good and bad situation. We have access to information at our fingertips. We disseminate information now faster than at any other time in human history. Just by Googling something, you opened up yourself up to a wide range of facts, studies, whatever. The problem is, though, almost anyone can make a web page.
Yeah.
And you can now find affirmation for almost any position you take.
Yeah.
So to navigate that, you have to kind of be a critical thinker. Like, you have to. It's just too much out. It's too much. It's like, I would call it misinformation overload. Like, it's a lot of that out there, and you have to navigate through that. I can't tell you how many times. I'm sure you've been through it yourself. You've been in a thread on a social network or a news or thread or something, and someone will post a link thinking that this website definitely is the nail in the coffin. This seals the deal on their position. You can't possibly top what they just placed there. And then you go to the website, trying to be an honest researcher. You go to the website, and you immediately see telltale signs of douchebaggery going on the website. You'll see everything from advertisements for books written about the Bible. You'll see all kinds of you'll see. First, one thing you won't see is citations and references in the articles.
Yeah,
you won't see any of that.
It's not going to say this is the journal we were published
right
in.
right
or the journal will be like one that's privately run and
follow the money.
And this is what you're talking about. This is where when I would hear your lyrics, this is clearly this man has a skeptical mind, and he has developed his what I call tool set, right? And more and more people, I think, are going to desperately need this as the internet expands how much information's available, as opposed to what is relevant or reliable data.
Right, absolutely. I think the one thing I always, talk about, because I'm part of a creative collective called Grand Unified, and one of the main things that we really stress is be a skeptic first.
Yeah.
The skepticism will lead you to atheism. Be a skeptic, but a skeptic that is not a critical thinker is every bad as any conspiracy theorist. Because
that's true.
Like you can't just, because at that point you're not a skeptic, you're a cynic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's far better to be a skeptic. Be a skeptic first, and because believe me, over these past few years, me coming out as an atheist, I have seen that not all atheists are skeptics. They might be skeptical about religion.
Yeah.
But when it comes to other, I've seen some really weird stuff.
Yeah, it's stunning, right? I've had it's a returning naivety. I have to be reminded of this, that we don't all come through the process, like you say, of skepticism. Right. Some people just kind of go, I don't like it.
I think that's the best way I've heard that described. Yeah. That's exactly what it is. And it's a lot not to be liked. Don't get me wrong. It's a lot not to be liked about the concept in general. But just because you don't like it doesn't necessarily mean it's not true. You still need to go through the process of discovering whether or not it's true or the odds of it being true. You know what I mean? And if you don't take that time to actually do an honest, thorough vetting of religion and the information that it purports to be to a point where you can't question it. If you don't take the time to do that, all you're going to wind up being is what they refer to as an asshole atheist. I don't like it. The hell with, I don't care about no Jesus. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And that's not a legitimate argument to me. Like when I see, I cringe when I see a lot of that stuff sometimes. Like, dude, stop. Please stop.
Yeah. Oh, it's there's some people that I've talked to, they don't seem to have even a desire to understand, like, if you're going to get into a debate on the issue, and they're like not even interested in the debate. They just, I don't understand that. It's I don't, like you say, I don't need to be an asshole. I don't need to crawl through people's windows into their kitchen and argue with them at breakfast about whether their religion is right. Right. But at the same time, when it comes to some of this issue, it has bleed over, even in an everyday life, to separation of church and state.
Absolutely.
How laws are drafted.
I think that that leads me to another thing that's kind of a pet peeve of mine, is the passive atheist, the one that's ultra passive, because and to the point where they get offended when one of us talks about it or takes a position. They get offended almost as much as the theist does. And it's puzzling to me, because this is my position on all of that. If they're using a holy text as the source of their bigotry or the source of their political position, that automatically makes that text open for scrutiny.
Yeah.
If you're going to say that, well, why shouldn't gays get married? Because in the Bible it says the moment you say that, it's open season on that book.
Yeah.
A truth statement, a fact statement. You're saying that because God said, or according to you, because God said that that's wrong or whatever, we should make all kinds of legal, precedents based off of that book. And the moment they do that, it's fair game. So when I see a lot of the more passive atheists who, no, don't talk about that. No, don't. But why are you attacking that? Like, dude, like, are you serious? This is what they're using to beat their intolerance over our heads with. So what do you want? You think I shouldn't? Like, to me, if you don't go at the root of the problem, you're not gonna, all you're doing is basically treating the symptoms.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go at the book.
For myself, the place, like I say, I draw the line, sounds like the same place as you. where I don't think people should ever, skeptics and atheists should never feel they have to be ashamed or quiet or bend the truth. Yeah. As long as you use your common sense, I guess, if you will, and if someone, for instance, the example I use is if you're at a funeral.
Yes.
That's probably not the time to get into it about how when you die, there's nothing after.
You think?
Yeah. And another thing is because of our religious background and how it took time for us to come out of it. I try to remind, in particular, skeptics that are atheists as well, that yes, there's an important conversation to have that religion is not being skeptical. That's true. But if religious people are coming out for skepticism on other issues, try to work with them on some level as opposed to just shutting them out, because they're learning how to use a part of their brain that they need.
Yeah. And it will, at some point, eventually, in a lot of cases, lead them to start to question those other things. Because, the biggest gateway, the biggest wall that's preventing a lot of it is fear. Yeah. It's fear that story is true and they'll be made to pay for it for eternity. There's also the fear of the social ramifications that comes from putting yourself out there. Because me and my family, I'll be quite honest, as far as my immediate family, we're cool, but the family members that are, the other family members, like my cousins and aunts and stuff like that, once they found out that I don't believe in Jesus, they kind of start distancing themselves from me. And mind you, this was back when I left Christianity to go to Islam.
Yeah.
So I already had the spears thrown at me. I already had that. So when I left religion completely, for them to throw spears at me then didn't really much mean anything to me. I had an impenetrable force field. I already went through that. Yeah, I know. Remember when I was into Muhammad real heavy? I remember what you said then. So just take what you said then and apply it to this too.
Yeah, so you were ready for what was to come.
Yeah, I pretty much was. I knew it was going to be a hot button thing because my family is uber religious. And like most people in the black community are like uber religious, where I have some family members that on Christmas their kids couldn't open up their presents until after they came from church. Like that's the type of family I come from. So believe me, it was a big deal for me just to leave Christianity and go to Islam. So that next step was to leave all religion altogether. I had been there, done that with Christianity. I know what you're going to say, and I don't really care.
Like you said earlier, it is hard to explain that to people who grew up in a non-religious home or where religion was basically just a kind of a tradition of on Christmas, maybe showing up at the church. And some of them have taken more time to learn than others. But, I've done, I don't know about you, but I've done quite a bit of listening and reading on the origins of the Bible, where the church came from. And so when I engage with a Christian, I'm able to ask them some questions and pretty quickly gauge how much they
know.
Yeah, how much they've bothered to learn.
Because that matters. That matters in any conversation that you're going to have with them. It's just like I've told myself too that I refuse to engage in any science conversation with someone who doesn't know what the word theory means in a scientific connotation.
Some of the basics.
Yeah, because I can't repair all of that. Now, I'm not a scientist.
Yeah.
While I am, and I'm not a teacher in that respect. While I've gone out of my way to learn about it because I'm interested in it. I can't repair that much. That much. I can't. It's too much. If you don't know basic stuff like what a theory is, what a hypothesis is, if you don't know this basic stuff, I don't even know. Like my wife once said. She said that a conversation is like a contract. We can't really have anything going on until we all agree on the meaning of the terms.
Yeah.
And if we're arguing, if I can't even get to the evidence of evolution yet, because I'm still arguing with you over what theory means in a science sense. So it's too much I have too much to do. I can't I can't take them back to the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade to learn this stuff. So you have to have a certain amount before I engage you on that topic. And it's kind of the same with religion. Like, there are people that believe simply because their families were into it. It's not that they've done any research on their own faith at all. They don't know any of the nuances, any of the history, any of that stuff.
Yeah.
They don't know any of it. So when you sit there and try to have a conversation with them about why your position on certain things, certain assertions made by the Bible, or certain things they saying is history when it's not even, you can't have those conversations with these people because they believe because it feels good. They believe because their family told them this is what it is. At a time when you were a child, where you didn't have the cognitive ability to analyze the claim that your parents was making, and you were very trusting, which is natural. Yeah. I mean, these people are the most important people in your life. You know?
I call them your first authority figures for
your first authority figures. Exactly.
Argument from authority.
Exactly. Grandma said, and see, that's the other wall that's placed up there too mentally when we're discussing it, because they think because I'm attacking their position, it's so much baggage with their position. You're attacking you're attacking my grandma. Like, it's a whole lot of stuff right there. You know.
Have you ever read The God Virus by Dr.
Yes,
Del Rey?
I have it. Yes.
Yeah, that is a brilliant work.
Yes, it is.
I recommend it every now and then to people just because it puts all of this into such a good analogy of the virus. Mm-hmm. And I think it's easier for people, once they have that analogy, to wrap their mind around how these things work.
Right, exactly. How certain antibodies, which, well, we refer to them as antibodies, but they're really positions
yeah.
that they inoculate the believer with, so that when someone comes to them with some, this is the facts, this is the data, they already have a answer, a talking point to dispute, and they feel like as long as they can respond to it, they've won something. It's fun. I actually interviewed the author of The God Virus a couple of years ago when I was a co-host on another podcast. He's a funny guy actually.
Yeah,
funny guy. It's a good book. It's a great book.
Yeah, he also did the audio version for it himself. He read it himself.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, which I always like. I like hearing the author read their own work.
Yeah.
So, another thing that probably a lot of people have no idea about, being in the artwork that you are, as a performer, what kind of reception have you gotten to your message from your fellow performers? From the general atmosphere.
It's funny because there are a lot more atheists than people think. That's number one. There are a lot more atheist rappers than people think too. That's the other thing. The thing you got to realize that in hip hop, most of these guys are trying to sell a product.
Yeah.
And they're doing the math on it. If the vast majority, well, I think they said 85% of the American people self-identify as Christian, and they're trying to market a product towards the vast majority to try to make money in sales, they're not going to come out and say anything about their atheism because they don't want to turn off that segment. So I have gotten messages from rappers. I won't put them on blast, but I've got messages like, dude, I like that song. I like what you were saying, blah, blah, blah. They will never do it themselves because they're trying to sell a product. And while there is a place for the business side of it, don't get me wrong, I mean, we all would like to make a living doing the thing that we love to do. I don't know. I don't feel like you're a complete artist if you don't put yourself out there with something that you really think. You know what I mean? I don't feel, I would feel weird about that. Taking a position in a song that I don't actually, it's one thing if I'm in a creative mood and I'm telling a story, that's one thing, but I just couldn't see me, doing a song, a gospel rap. Like I couldn't see.
I imagine it wouldn't be as rewarding for you to do what you do if you couldn't be honest about your experience and your.
Absolutely. Yeah. But usually, like I said, the reception I get from my fellow artists. And again, I'm spoiled because being a part of Grand Unified, it's a lot of rappers in Grand Unified that talk about what I talk about. So I'm spoiled being around these guys. So when I do get a response from another rapper that's outside of that creative collective, it sometimes weirds me out a bit. Like, dude, how come you just don't talk about it in your songs? But then I remember, no, because he's trying to sell a product to a vast majority of people. And it's funny because I've actually been accused by Christians of, well, you're only doing this to sell records. Dude, come on, so are you serious? If I was doing this just to sell records, trust me, I would not market towards atheists because they're like not the majority. I would do something completely milquetoast, non-threatening, and non-controversial. But I think it's the artist's job to create conversation. Like, they haven't talked about it.
I think also it doesn't make any sense, not just because of numbers, but because if you were, for instance, like you say, to just pretend to be pro-Christian, and some Christians took, oh, that's some great tracks, they can circulate that within their community a lot faster than atheists tend to do.
Oh, yes.
So
absolutely.
From a business point of view, that argument is completely
no sense.
Yeah.
And the fact that I have also learned that hip-hop is not the music of choice in the atheist community. You know what I mean? So I'm still fighting up a hill. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm still fighting up a hill. Most of the atheists I come across, their first love is rock or metal. You know what I mean? And I like both of those things too. But you'd be surprised how many fans that I have that say, I'm not usually into rap, but you know what I'm saying? So I'm fighting an uphill battle with that as well. You know, so just the idea that it's done just to sell records. Look, I'm gonna tell you, you know, straight like that. I appreciate everybody that came out of their comfort zone of a music or a genre that they ordinarily didn't listen to or had a negative perception about, and support my work. You know, because I get a lot of that, and a lot of people that buy my CDs and stuff, they're not ordinarily into rap. I was the gateway for them to actually get into it and then consider what it can possibly be, because that's what it used to be. I mean, it started off on the party tip, but it got to a point where people were actually making political positions. They were discussing real topics, and it kind of got away from that, back to the partying and the jewelry and the clothes and stuff like that. And a lot of people left it when it went back to that. Yeah. And I'm saying it can be that again. It's like a hammer is only a tool if I use it as a tool. It can also be a weapon. You know what I mean? So that's what hip hop is. Hip hop is a tool set. You can use it to talk trash, or you can use it to disseminate information and express an idea.
Content is everyone else. I'm not for you. I got these people attacking the things I rap about, so I thought I'd take this time to slap the taste from out their mouth and verbally abuse the bastards quite nicely. The comments that you vomit are likely only to spite me, but some of y'all have ignorance that nothing else surpasses. It's not a joke to me, provoking me, cause boost the asses. See, after all these years of rappers trying to dumb it down, I guess you listen long enough, so you fucking stupid now. You and your generation, the short bus passengers, think you got the answers, that's the reason why I laugh at you. The IQ of my audience is much larger than yours is, and I refuse to make my art a toilet for applauses. The fact is that you're ignorant, lower level intellect, completely unprepared and uninvolved to comprehend me yet. Cause my music's not suited for the mainstream. My music is for those who think deeply when they explain things. And you the type that sniffs glue with boots without the shoestrings and answers the fucking door when you thought you heard a phone ring. You dumbasses, just a bunch of ignoramuses that follows every trend. It don't matter how fucking lame it is. Go on and live your life walking with your eyes closed. I know. If ignorance is a drug, then you fuckers overdose. I know. Go on and play that stupid shit until you overload. I know. You're dead already, just waiting for you to decompose. I know. My music's not for you. It's nothing that you even need. I know.
It's had, you know, like I say, when I was younger, it was guys like Run DMC, and they had an impact on not just the lyrical content, I guess. I mean, just the introduction to the art form expanded things about how I see the world. But yeah, exactly. This is one of the things that drew me to rap. And then I kind of drifted away, like you say, when it was all about, you know, look at how great my car is.
Yeah.
And, or alternatively, how I'm going to smash you. And
right. Right.
You know, I understand the battles. It tends to be a lot like that, right? But when it's laying down a track and the only thing you have is that kind of content over and over again. So, you know, a lot of that stuff, I would like hearing on the radio once or twice, but I never really got into it.
Right.
So, like I say, hearing your stuff was, I've been listening to it a lot.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
It's great. We both have a Christian background, so do you remember any of the Christian rap groups from years back?
Vaguely. I remember a lot of local guys, well, not a lot, but it was a few local guys in Baltimore, and I heard one. Actually, he wasn't bad. As far as I'm speaking from a technical standpoint, lyrically, the way he put his rhymes together, they weren't bad. I think the problem with Christian rap is that nobody wants to be preached to while they're dancing. That's the problem. No one wants to be preached to in the club. That's the problem. You know what I mean? And I think that's why it will probably never enjoy even though the vast majority of people in this country self-identify as Christian, I don't think it will ever enjoy the same amount of popularity as the secular hip hop. And I don't think that mine necessarily will either. I mean, I rap about other things too, but you'll never see me like I don't rap about thug life or like all that type of stuff because it's not interesting to me. It's just not. It's easy to do. I used to do it when I was a teenager. It's easy. It's nothing hard about that. It's not challenging at all. Not at all. So I don't particularly like. There are some guys that do it that I listen to that I was like, yeah, I like that. I like how he did that. I like the beat. I like the way he put his rhymes together. Oh, that's an interesting metaphor or simile he used there. Yeah. But as a rule, I don't, and I usually don't collaborate with artists where that's the bulk of their content because I have an audience now and they don't want to see me do that either. I don't want to do it. So,
obviously the reason I went away from all the Christian music was as I started drifting away from the church, but they've got, I guess they've got their set audience. And they do. They
have the side huggers. They have, all the, they do have an ingrained, just like I do. I think one thing, one of the artists in Grand Unified, Johnny Hoax, he said, and it sticks out of my mind. He said, you can find an audience for almost anything as long as it's polished. As long as the material is polished.
Yeah.
And there's 7 billion people in the world. You can find some audience for any of that. So I'm sure they probably do quite well on an independent underground. I'm pretty sure they do really well. I just don't believe that it will ever be anything beyond that simply because of the context. And for the record, even when I was a Christian, I hated gospel music. just saying, just putting that out there.
Oh man, yeah,
I hated gospel music.
Yeah.
So depressing.
and really, there's on some level, even when I was a Christian, on some level, how much can you respect basically like a dozen or so catchphrases or concepts that are sung over and over again?
Yeah, right.
Right. We have this brand new song and everyone's gonna love it. And it's basically the same lines.
He's saying the same thing. Praise him, praise him, praise him.
Yeah,
that's the extent of. Oh, he changed my life, or whatever. I don't know. It's just
praise him over and over again. But it's not indoctrination.
Oh no, it's never that. It's never that. And
that's just what. Sorry.
The bottom line with all of that is any place that someone will sit you down for 2 hours, you can't look out the windows and you can't ask questions. They're brainwashing you. Right? They're brainwashing.
Yep. Keep your eyes open and listen to what I am saying for this next hour.
Yeah, come on. I mean, that's just not cool. And again, people, I know they're conditioned to it because when you start somebody out as a child, it's difficult to break that stuff, man. It is, right?
Yeah.
And it's ingrained in our language. When somebody sneezes, bless you. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a tough hill to climb. But I think the more of us talk about it in an intelligent, sometimes entertaining way, I think it'll become more socially acceptable to talk about. Because we got to get to that point first, where it's not a taboo to even discuss it. And then once we get to that point, we could probably get to a point where they're actually listening to what the hell we're saying. Like, are you really hearing what I'm saying? Like, the emperor's not wearing any clothes over there. Like, if you pull that curtain back, it's just a man over there with smoke screens and a light show. Right? He's not the mighty Oz. You know,
well, see,
so,
if you get them to consider your arguments,
yeah,
then you're already helping them take their early steps towards understanding the flaws. So that's probably why they resist us, I imagine.
Oh yeah, I'm certain of it. I'm certain of it. Like I said, a lot of the conversations I've gotten into with people over the years has really taught me a lot too, because I was very abrasive at first too, and I think I noticed it a lot with people that are just coming to grips with their atheism. They're real pumped up about it.
Yeah.
They're real pumped up about it, and sometimes they go a little overboard. I was that same way. So I recognize it, but the longer I've been having these discussions and talking to people and seeing how to actually deal with people and what people are more receptive to than not, I've learned that, dude, that's just not that tactic there will get you ignored. They get every good point that you put into that conversation completely ignored.
Yeah. Well, I was an atheist for a couple years, like I say, before I started letting people know. Mm-hmm. And for me, that anger came after I started getting into conversations openly with people about it, who were, we're getting into arguments.
Infuriating.
So, yeah.
Some of the things dude, I know. Some of the stuff, some of the assertions they make, some of the things they say, and how judgmental they are about people. Like some of the stuff, it can definitely push you, to get into some aggressive posture with them, because and then some of it is so, I just gotta say, so absurd that a lot of it doesn't really deserve a response. Like sometimes I demonstrate absurdity by being absurd. It's so bad, just.
Well, I just had to set some standards for myself. Like you say, at first you're over aggressive, right? There's a phase where that's natural. So one of the standards I set, for instance, is with Facebook. When I was first letting people know and they started getting into it with me, I would start putting up status updates that were quotes out of the Bible, and that's all it was. But it would be like God telling, in the Old Testament, how to smash kids' heads on rocks.
Yeah, right, right.
And I would get these furious responses from people. And
out of context.
Yeah, it's out of context. And of course, obviously, you and I both know there's no justifying context for that.
No, not at all. Not at all.
But like you say, it's counterproductive in the sense that it would just get people angry or shut people off. A couple people dropped off of my list. Yeah. And I just realized, like, this is more, my analogy is it's more like sitting at the dinner table with friends and family. No sense starting a fight.
Right. Don't have to start it, but I'm not going to run from it either. Yeah, right. That's the one thing. I'm not like, I understand that there is a time and place in certain social situations where you need where that conversation doesn't need to be part of the equation, but I'm not running from it. So if you ask me, be careful what you ask me,
Yeah.
You have to take some responsibility for that too. Like the person that's taking responsibility for that. Be careful what if you really don't want to hear my answer, you probably shouldn't ask me the question.
And it's amazing how people ask so many questions when they obviously don't want to know the answer.
Yeah.
Well, why are you asking that question and then getting angry that I'm answering it?
Right. You wanted me to tell the truth, or would you prefer that I lied to you? And I think deep down, secretly, the human ape loves to be lied to. That's what I think.
It's true.
Loves to be lied to.
Well, that's
made to feel good.
That's a much quicker way to make friends in the general public.
And influence people. Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
they love it. They like to be patted on the back and told everything is going to be all right. You know what I mean? Like it's cool. I'm down. I'm with you. I think like you think. We are one. I'm telling you, they love it. But the moment one thing I always like to say is that stupid people will do stupid things in a vacuum and high five each other. It's only until a smarter person from the outside comes in that they'll ever change the way they think or whatever. And it's the approach that other person used. So when you see all this confirmation bias between people that all, pretty much think the same way and don't question each other because what they're saying is exactly what the other person thinks, and they high five and they might be saying some stupid shit. Yeah. And it takes a guy like me or a guy like you to walk up, hey, you didn't realize that's some dumb shit you over there saying, or that's really stupid, and I'll tell you why it's dumb. And then the way you do it depends on whether or not they'll be receptive to it. It's how you do it.
The guy who's going to be my regular co-host was here yesterday, and the term he used, because he's talking about arguing with a few particular young Earth creationists that he knows. Oh. And the term he used is, he said, what irritates me is when they are gleefully ignorant.
Yes.
Where they just smile at me and essentially are admitting they don't know what they're talking about, and they're so happy about it.
And they're satisfied. Oh, dude. It's a reason why when you take the acronym for their name, it's pronounced YEK. Because that's pretty much like, I can't. It's that gleeful ignorance, and it's also that arrogant ignorance. The type that tells you, number one, no, I don't know, and I don't care. I'm smarter for not knowing, if that makes sense. I can't. Or the type that tells you they can't, or feels like they can't be questioned or corrected. They feel like they can't be corrected. So yeah, it's a pet peeve of mine as well. Yuck.
That's a good descriptor for guys like Ray Comfort, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I call them regressives. They're not progressive. They're regressives. They want to take us back, but actually, in reality, let's call a spade a spade. They don't want to take us back to that. And this is the thing that I pointed out in the song "Ballad of the Non-Believer," when I said, "Don't believe these guys to say it's science they despise when they standing in the line for the iPhone 5."
I love that line. That's awesome.
Don't believe it, man. This is a talking point. A position that they feel they have to take because they believe that somewhere there's somebody keeping score of this. But in truth, their actions betray their true feelings. Yeah. They love technology. Every time they turn the light on in their bedroom when they wake up, they love technology. Every time they log online and talk to people about how scientists don't know shit. You know what I mean? Like the same scientists that use the exact same method that allowed your computer to work in the first place. Yep. All of the scientific principles that came about as a result of the scientific method that allows you to be able to drive your car and understand the forces at work right there. Those same guys that don't know shit, but you're constantly benefiting from the shit they don't know. And it's ridiculous. It's absurd. That's a pet peeve of mine. The anti-science crowd, because they're not really anti-science.
Right.
It's just a talking point.
They're picking and choosing.
Yeah,
it's a cognitive dissonance. From my background, that line is an awesome line, particularly good for my background because the generation before me, they're all, like my parents' generation, they're all modern, but our grandparents or great grandparents, they're all old colony Mennonites, horse and buggy and stuff like this. Right. So one of the things that I have said to some of them in discussions before is, so you don't believe in a lot of scientific theories as science as a community presents them because you don't agree with them on your theology. Right. But I don't see you going back to horse and buggy. You're still using all this technology.
Yeah.
Like you say, cell phone is the perfect example. It's so personal and it's so cutting edge for most people when they're carrying it around.
When you carry your cell phone, and I say the same thing about my computer, my cell phone is like another room in my house. I keep really cool stuff there. You know what I mean? So when I know it's that way for the vast majority of us living in the first world, especially. I know it's that way. So when I hear them, go on and on about scientists and harumph scientists, science. When I hear that, it really irritates me because they saying it while they got the Bluetooth in their ear. Like, it really irritates me when they say that after they watched the Super Bowl on a big screen TV with cable. Like, it really irritates me. You know what I mean? So, I don't know, man.
It is frustrating. When it comes to other ideas, like when you get more into what's specifically skepticism, ideas that aren't specifically religious, people have a lot of unfounded ideas as well these days that are... Have you heard of this? I don't know what's exactly called. People think that they have a wind turbine near them, and they think that this is going to make them sick.
Yeah, I saw a blurb about that online. Dude, what is the deal with that? Like,
well, what they say is that it's releasing certain frequencies into the local area, and it makes people sick. The specifics are not as important because I was introduced to this. I was introduced to this by hearing it a couple times on a show called Coast to Coast.
Mm-hmm. I've heard of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's an evil show where they endorse all this to lonely people in the middle of the night at home.
Yeah.
But I went into a restaurant, and they had a few kilometers away, a couple miles away, they had a wind turbine set up, one of these giant ones. And they had a flyer up saying, let's shut this down. There's this doctor who wrote this book, and this is causing harm. Mm. And I read the flyer, and it's talking about the frequencies, right? So I looked at the lady who ran the place, and I said, "Did you guys put this up? Is this something that's going on here?" And she said, "Oh yeah. I put that up, and I'm trying to get the people in the community aware of the dangers of these wind turbines." And I said, "So you're concerned the frequencies are affecting you, your health, and everyone else around here?" "Yeah." And I said, "So have you tried calling in? I said, you have a cell phone with you, right?" And she's like, "Yeah." I said, "Have you used it to call in and talk to this doctor about the dangers of frequencies, of high-end frequencies?" And she's like, "Well, yeah." She's like, "No, she didn't get it at all, right?" And I'm like, "Oh. Well, maybe the next time you throw some food in the microwave, just take a couple steps away and try and find his number." And there was a couple people in the restaurant who understood what I was doing, but she was completely oblivious.
Oh, that's so bad. Dude.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm glad you did it because it made a larger point. And I would just love for somebody to take like that example of what you did there and apply it to a lot of things. Like just a lot of things. Like the frequencies are going to hurt you, but you're on your cell phone. The frequencies are going to hurt you, but you use the microwave. Come on, please. I mean,
there is a common thread. There are some differences, but as far as the way the brain works, it's a type of ignorance, and people they present things to you that, as a layperson who's never looked into it, sound plausible on the surface.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's the other thing. It used to be a time when the village idiot, the neighborhood crank, was isolated in his little area. Everybody knew who he was. That's the weird dude that wears the aluminum foil cap on his head.
Yep.
We ignore him. Unfortunately, in 2013, we have the internet. So the village idiots can connect with each other and make websites and look like a real force out there, where they were once isolated and you could look at them and clearly see that they were batshit crazy.
Yeah.
Now,
absolutely,
they can really make themselves seem like, because I've seen websites that look very snazzy. They look very, impressive. But I always go to the about section of every website that I'm not familiar with, I haven't used over a period of time. I always go to the about section because I want to see who's doing this, what's their motivation, see if I can get a clue on that. Because, man, I'm telling you, just the idea that people think that all I have to do is post a link to something in the conversation, and I've proven my point, shows me that we still have a lot of work to do. As far as the skeptical community, teaching skepticism, we have a lot of work to do. Don't get me wrong. I'm happy to see people are trying to throw a citation or a reference for their bullshit.
It's a first.
That's a first, but it needs to go to the next level of actually vetting that information before you present it to me as if, atheist zero, theist, conspiracy theorist / homeopathic medicine version 1.
Another difficult thing is, like you're saying, first of all, I think that there are a number of particular atheists that are unaware that how these people are grouping, not just on the internet, but the show Coast to Coast I mentioned. I used, as a truck driver, right? I used to listen to it for entertainment late at night. I thought it was funny.
Right.
But at some point, I started becoming angry at the fact that I started realizing that a lot of this stuff was aimed at people who were feeling lonely or isolated,
Yes, absolutely.
they're even mentally ill. And in the past, like you say, that was one person or two people, and now they're reinforcing that sense of things that aren't based in reality.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, it's a problem, and it's something that's gonna continually bite us in the ass unless it's attacked up front. Like as soon as somebody drops some unsubstantiated nonsense, it needs to be attacked, and it needs to be not in a offensive way, out on purpose. But if they're offended by us telling them that this isn't so and this is why, or you don't have enough evidence actually to present that as a fact, you can believe it all you want, but to present it out there like this is what's happening, and this is like that's where I really have an issue with, because I mean all of us have thoughts about situations we see based off of the limited knowledge we have of the situation. But I think the trick of it is to position yourself like, I don't know if this is true, but this is my thoughts on it after seeing what I've observed. If you just frame it that way, you won't irritate me. But the moment you say, man, this is what's happening. I had a guy say the other day that the CIA gave the Syrian thugs the sarin gas so they could have an excuse to go into Syria. Now, here's the thing. I know our government, does some fucked up shit and has for years.
Yeah.
But you can't use the fucked up shit they did in the past to make a truth claim about this incident unless you have evidence, because every claim has to stand on the merits of its own, not based off of, because that's like saying that if I stole a car before, went to court, if they proved I stole it, that means that every car that's stolen afterwards had to be stolen by me because I stole a car once. It's irritating. Yeah. It's irritating.
I was introduced to a lot of concepts. Some people disagree with certain things that he said, but I like the general flow of Joseph Campbell's breaking down of mythology, the different types of context of how people basically function. Mm-hmm. And what you're getting at, this irrational way of saying the CIA, or let's just jump right straight to the Illuminati.
Yeah.
I had someone ask me about that the other day. Oh, you believe in the Illuminati, right? Like it was given based on something else I had said. And, people have different ways of using it, but essentially I disagree with pretty much all of them, unless by Illuminati you just mean like a general sense that there are people you don't like that are in power.
Oh, well, we can all agree to that.
Yeah. But the Illuminati, or like in this case, like you said, the CIA, they have to have these supernatural, superhuman abilities to have these coordinated secret efforts and pull off things with such perfection. Right. And I think that goes back to just the narrative we always have in mythology, where you have the insurmountable villain or evil force, and the other person telling you the story clearly is playing the role of the hero, who is looking to challenge it.
Yes, absolutely. It's funny because you say that, because if you really look at, I was watching the other day this movie called Immortals, and it's based off the Greek myth about Theseus and him being the son of Zeus and all this stuff like that. And I was just noticing some of the paradigms in the story was very similar to the way people frame their big bad conspiracy dudes now. Like the gods are all powerful. They work in mysterious ways. They can get shit done that you couldn't even imagine. So all someone has to do is just say the gods did that, and it kills the conversation, because it's understood to these people that the gods can do anything. And that's kind of how it is with when they say the CIA, the Illuminati. They then in turn become the new gods. And once you say the Illuminati did it to a group of people that believe that Illuminati can do anything, that's the end of the conversation. They don't even have to. You don't have to prove to them. You don't have to bring any evidence to bear. You just have to say the Illuminati did that. And to those group of people, that's enough. Like, they can do anything. So, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's one of the arguments that really. There was a period of time before I, solidified myself as a skeptic. I was already an atheist, but like not quite a skeptic yet. I didn't have those tools in place. Where I didn't believe in shape-shifting lizards that were running the government
the
or anything.
reptilians.
but some of the stuff that came across from a certain point of view, I would entertain it.
Me too.
Right.
Me too.
And and developing those skills of, like you say, what is your source for this? One of the things I like to ask people is, what journal is it published in, or what institution? What the researchers who did this? What institution were they attached to? Something where I can try and find some level of the reliability.
Yeah, I feel you. I definitely feel you. I think that's important too, because to give you an example, the website that the guy cited that was talking about the CIA and the sarin gas and the Syrians, I go to the website and I'm reading it, and they have videos there. Now, it was 3 videos. The first video didn't say what the guy said it was supposed to say. It didn't show that. It just showed a bunch of Syrians speaking in their native tongue. That's it. It didn't say anything that he was saying that he said. Then the second one was the tell. This was the tell. The second one was a video of apparently someone taking the gas or the weapons or whatever and putting it into a truck or something. Mind you, in the background, they had this sinister music playing. That's the tell right there. That's the tell. Like, dude, you can't really tell me that you think this is legit. Who does that? Like no reputable journalist or fact-finding news outlet puts sinister music behind. And come on, are you serious? Like, that's Hollywood. Like, I do that. That's not something. Come on, man. Like, that's the tell.
They used to call that type of behavior propaganda, and now they call it public relations or communications.
Yeah. It's so proper. I like the original term, propaganda.
Get your emotions going rather than overpower any doubts.
Yeah, so that you suspend disbelief, and I think therein lies the problem right there. Like, we're too quick to believe something without actually looking into it.
Yeah,
and we don't know how to compartmentalize in our brains. This is the stuff that I'm reasonably sure of. And this is the stuff that I just have a feeling based off of the limited knowledge I have might be the case. But I'm willing to change depending on the evidence. It seems like the human ape has a problem trying to do that. And it's funny because a theist posted a comment on my channel, my YouTube channel a while ago. And they were kind of trying to give me the business about the name of my channel, Rational Warrior. And the thing I tried to explain to him was, like, being a rational warrior, at least my take on it, is not just about fighting the forces of irrationality from without. It's also about fighting it from within, because we all have them. And every day I try to fight it. Every day. But some people aren't even trying. They're not even picking the sword up to truly try to falsify their own thoughts. They won't do it, man. They won't do it.
I wanted to ask you about a couple of your songs. First one I'll ask you about is Dark Matter. This one stood out. What inspired this? What was?
Well, last year, sometime, the Grand Unified Movement was was working on a comic book. Each of the characters in the comic book was going to be loosely based on the artists that's in Grand Unified, as well as some of the other members. Me being, my stage name in Tombstone Da Deadman, I created a character for the comic book that was based around my name. The premise of the comic book was that, imagine if the world had never went through the Dark Ages. Like, instead of it being the Dark Age, it was a dark period of maybe 40 years. And it got crushed, and enlightenment came early. And just imagine, in that same world, quantum computers were developed in the 1800s. You know what I'm saying? Like,
wow, yeah.
Just imagine the world, that would have produced. And that's the backdrop from the comic book. That those first two verses are the origin story of my character. And the other artist is Grand Unified Artist, Lady Assassin. That is the origin of another character in the story Dark Matter. And I laugh because I always get questions about that song. I think people hear it without the context of the comic book and go, "Wow, what are they really saying?" Yeah, I'm a huge comic book nut. I admitted comic geek. So ever since I was probably about 10 or 11, a friend of mine had all these comic books in his house, and I used to go up there and I would read them. Like, this stuff is amazing. So I grew up reading them, and I kind of fell off from reading them for a while. And my nephew was in a bookstore, I think it was Barnes and Noble, and he found some. And he bought them, and I looked at them, and I was instantly back into it again. So doing the comic book, we kind of we haven't shelved the idea. It's just it's been put on the back burner because there's other things that we need to do. But we definitely want to do that. That's something we definitely want to do.
Why am I wearing this? Why would my family dress me like I'm a Lord of the Sith? I need some time to think and figure this out. Is that some people coming, they see me, they screaming, they shout, and now I gotta get away from this place. I start to running, but I notice that I'm moving at a startling pace, faster and faster. I just don't understand, and plus I didn't even notice what appears to be a scythe in my hand. I jump over the fence and land about 100 yards away in the street in front of a truck that's quickly coming my way. I guess my instincts took over, started swinging the sight. To my surprise, I ripped the truck in half in only one slice. Last night while dreaming of dark matter, the walls of my reality crashed and began to shatter. And when I opened my eyes, my life was ripped and tattered. Must be the dark matter, must be the dark matter. Last night while dreaming of dark matter, the walls of my reality crashed and began to shatter. And when I opened my eyes, my life was ripped and tattered. Must be
Ballad of the Non-Believer.
Mm-hmm.
What was your inspiration for bringing that one up?
Well, when that song comes from, as well as Dark Matter, comes from off the Death Lives EP. The album I released previously was Rise of the Infidel. Rise of the Infidel is all atheism all the time on there. The Death Lives one was, I consider that kind of a supplement to that first one, but it had different content on there. Ballad of the Non-Believer came about because I still wanted to talk about that topic. That's why the first verse, I'm kind of explaining how I grew up.
Yeah.
And how I don't blame my mother for me being religious, because she grew up in a society and in a community where that was, the thing to be. There was no other way to look at life and to look at how you were supposed to conduct yourself and behave, except through the lens of religion. She meant well. She thought that she was doing the right thing.
I can totally. One of the things I've clarified a couple times, just to make sure people don't get the wrong idea, is that my parents are good people.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say they're bad people or that they're stupid. That's another one that sometimes people
Exactly.
Yeah.
They were just wrong. And we all are wrong at times. So, I don't blame. That's why the first verse is about that. The second verse is the one where I really wanted to talk about the science part of it, because, mind you, this song was not written all in one day. I wrote a verse one day and a verse another day and a verse another day. And what really inspired the second verse is from the conversations I've had online and in person about that with the anti-science crowd, And I definitely wanted to put my foot in the ass of those comedians that were running around saying, if we came from monkeys, then why there's still monkeys? Which to me, which to me is the equivalent of saying, if we came from mothers, why are there still mothers? Like, dude, stop. Stop. You're going to hurt yourself. Stop.
Yeah.
So, and then the last verse was more like a battle type of thing. I was feeling antagonistic.
Yeah.
That's why the last verse came out the way it did. It's just that song in particular, like I said, got me a nice amount of attention on that album. Like, even to the point where the local paper in my town, which is decidedly not atheistic themed at all, did a little story on the album and particularly focused in on that song. So
yeah. The last one I want to ask you about in particular is purpose. Yeah. A lot of times I think as atheists we get caught up in what we're not.
Yeah.
And as skeptics we often get caught up in breaking down other people's misconceptions. But purpose touches on what we are. You know, it's a positive thing about the freedoms or the perspectives that we can now have.
Right.
So what was your inspiration for this, or what's your perspective on it now?
My perspective on it is basically, you know, too many people have this idea that they were put here to do something, and the person or thing, there's an outside agency that has already scripted their life and said, this is what you were put here to do. And my position on that, which is what informed the song, is that I make my own damn purpose. There is no outside agency, no supreme script writer up there saying what I want to do with my life and the things that I think are important. That comes from, you know, my personal, the way I see the world. That comes from, of course, there's outside stimuli that affects that. But for the most part, I make my decision. Like, it's me. It's all about me.
Yeah.
Life has no purpose except for the purpose we choose to give it. And it's like you said earlier, too many atheists get caught up in what we're talking about, what we're not. Well, I'm here to tell you what I am. I'm a MC, father, skeptic, comic geek. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
This is what I am. You know, and you want to know, as far as in principle, what I think that parents should take care of their damn kids.
Yeah.
I think that too many guys shouldn't be hanging out there on that street corner creating all kinds of havoc.
Yeah.
I think that reading is probably a great thing. Ask me. Don't assume just because I'm an atheist.
Yeah.
And it's based off of some straw man atheists that the people who already don't like us created and put that into your head. Like, ask me, because I make my own purpose. Don't tell me, well, if you don't believe in God, I mean, what is your moral barometer? I don't even want to go there with that foolishness right there. You know, like, ask me what I think.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm going to tell you, I make my own purpose. I rap because I want to.
It's also it's incredibly empowering once you have that sense of I don't tell me I need a destiny. I make my own destiny.
Right. It's mine.
That is extremely empowering. And you know what? When it comes to talking to people who are still believers, or are big believers in woo, isn't this something that they need to see, that that the person they're talking to, yourself or me, that you do have a strong sense of positivity in your life.
Yes.
If they don't see that in you, they're going to wonder if that's, if I listen to what this person's saying, what am I going to have? Right. Because the thing they have now is all they know.
This is all they have. And again, the straw man that they develop about atheists is that we're lost. We don't know what we want. We don't know anything about as far as how to conduct ourselves. This is the straw man that they have, because we don't have some God that wrote out a list of demands, a hostage note, basically. If you don't do this and don't do this and don't do this, I will send you to hell. Like, we don't subscribe to that. So in their mind, we're just like a leaf blowing in the wind.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for us to start saying what we are. You know what I mean? Not just be defined by what we're not, but tell them what we are. And it won't be the same for everybody, which is the beauty of it.
You ever fail.
Won't be the same.
But you stupid if you ain't even tried.
Purpose that connects, purpose that pulls, that guides, that thrives. It is purpose that defines.
I make my own purpose.
Purpose that connects, purpose that pulls, that guides, that thrives. It is purpose that defines.
I make my own purpose. All of my life I was the type that thought that I was worthless unless defined by some designer that would grant me purpose. I was a clown, I was down with religion's three-ring circus and convinced that daddy would hurt us and throw us in the furnace. I used to think that Lucifer was waiting by the corner, just planting seeds of destruction and causing all disorder. Total illogical thinking adopted from primitive people from an era where they first tried to define what's good and evil. How could you apply this to what we know today? As if we haven't advanced or learned in the slightest way. When I look back, I think about all the time that I wasted praying to the sky for nothing and mad cause I can't replace it. So now I gotta live my
Absolutely. Diversity and different ideas, different perspectives. These are all good.
Right.
As long as they're based in reality.
As long as they're based in reality and I'm not hurting anybody else. I'm not infringing on somebody else's quality of life. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just, if I don't, one thing that kills me about Americans is that we are so against kings. We don't like emperors. We don't like kings. Yeah. But when it comes to a deity, we don't have the same, you know what I mean? Like, you would think we would oppose that as fervently because that's what it is. You're basically, religious folks are basically arguing for the divine right of kings, of a king.
It reminds me a little bit of that scene in that geek out a little bit, Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
Where he offers the ring to that elven, the high elven, and she goes, "You would have, in place of a dark lord, a dark queen." You're replacing one with another, right?
Right. That's a good analogy, and it's actually that's a good analogy. That's actually the case. I don't know, man. I just think that we need to have more positive examples because you have to at some point like combat the narrative that they're trying to spin, and they have an engine that can spin it. You know, they have politicians lining up to kiss their asses.
I heard about there's one politician, I can't remember what state he's out of. He just announced his retirement, and everyone knew he was gay. What's his name? And now that he's out of office, now he's willing to tell people he's an atheist.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah.
How about that? So the next time you hear these radical theistic groups talking about the persecution of Christians in this country or religious people in this country, just laugh because it's so not the case. Like nobody gets on TV in the middle of a newscast and says, "Happy Carl Sagan Day."
Yeah. The poor majority.
Yeah, come on. Like, you know, it's ridiculous. Like, even when it comes to being president, and this is another thing that really irritates me, when it comes to being president of the United States, you basically have them having to reaffirm and reassure in the minds of the masses that they believe in angels, demons, and gods. Like they have to do that or no one will want to vote for them. Because, you know, they think somehow that's a litmus test, even though it's against the Constitution to have such a test. But it's subtle. It's not even subtle. Like they're literally going out of their way. It's this huge marketing plan to show them at church. You know what I'm saying? Like show them. Like it's disgusting. It really is. And it's one of the, like I said, it's one of the things that irritates me because what in the hell does that have to do with how competent they are at this job?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, look, this guy here, he's got years of training and expertise in the area of this and that. The other guy, he's just kind of a person with, I don't know, owns a business and it's unrelated. But they believe in God. Oh, that's the guy.
Yeah, that's the one. This guy believes in devils.
Yeah. So
we gotta elect him. Are you serious? Like, I've often said that the populace gets the government that they deserve. Like, if you have all these folks up in there that even if they don't really believe and feel like they gotta lie, that's saying something. That's saying something about their character. So, like, you have them in office, so you're kind of screwed either way because either you have a nut job that believes that they're angels and demons and spirits stuff, or you have a liar. Yeah. You know, you can't really win.
Yeah, it's true. As a truck driver, I've spent most of the last 6 years in the U.S. You know, I'm Canadian by citizenship, but I consider myself an honorary American.
Right.
So one of the things I was able to catch up on a lot was I picked up these audio programs on history, the Revolution in particular, a lot about the Revolution, a bit about the Civil War. But The American politicians at the Revolution time are very interesting and very different from the politicians and the way the politicians now would paint the ones of the past.
Right.
One of the people that I found was really misunderstood was George Washington. Definitely not a saint, though he's been sanctified.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But one of the things people say about him is that he was a Christian. A lot of people will say this. But a lot of people don't realize that, first of all, there's a prayer book they circulate. It's not in his handwriting. Right? So it's not his book. Someone put it there later to make it look like he had a prayer book. So like real historians know this. The general public is still told otherwise. And another big one was they say he was a Christian because he went to a certain church with his wife. But what they don't tell you is that when they would do communion, he would stand up and leave the building to make sure no one misunderstood why he was there, that he was not a believer.
Wow.
Yeah. Interesting things you learn when you actually get into the nitty gritty about history, but most people just don't, I guess they don't have the time or some people the inclination.
Or the interest. I mean, it's interesting that you say that because one thing I've also observed is how they've made patriotism in this country or nationalism kind of a religion. Because what they've done is they've taken the Constitution and made it a holy book. And they've taken the founding fathers and made them into saints and prophets. Just by the way they talk about them, by the way they, like you said, elevate them to sainthood, as if these weren't real people doing real things at a very primitive time in our history, which is the other thing that I think gets overlooked. It was a primitive time compared to how we live now. And some of the ideas and some of the social paradigms were vastly different back then than they are now. And the way I hear, especially those on the right, but it's not just them, the way I hear people talk about it, it's almost with a religious fervor. And if you dispute or how can I put it, disagree with a certain perspective, and they can find one of the founding fathers that maybe had that sentiment or a similar sentiment, they'll post that up like, if you don't think the way our founding fathers thought, then you're just not American.
That's right.
You know, it's
because they all thought as the Borg. They're all one mind.
Yeah, they were all one mind over there. And resistance was futile. Right.
We are the founding fathers. Resistance is futile.
Right. So, I mean, it's interesting. It just seems like we are somehow programmed to want to worship something. Like, and I don't know if it's from I don't know if it comes from a tribal paradigm where there's always an alpha, and the alpha, the guy, the leader that's in charge, he is looked upon as, we follow this guy. This guy here, he's the one. He knows what to do. He's got the plan. And I don't know if it's an extension of that, where we take that person and elevate them to a pedestal. But the one thing I do know is that as much as people love to worship heroes, they love even more to watch a hero fall. They love it. They love it.
That's a lot of what we see on television these days too.
I don't want to be that guy. I just want to rap. Don't get me wrong, I appreciate all the love and support that I get from my fans and supporters, but at the same time, I don't want to be that guy. That guy that everyone enjoyed on the way up, but is enjoying more on the way down. You know?
Well, I think the way to avoid having that happen to you is to always have a sense of grounded self-identity. What I tell people is that when famous people really get into trouble, anyone who is like a celebrity status in any community is not when people say all kinds of amazing things about them. It's when they start believing those amazing things about them.
That's true.
Listen, I want to say before I forget, my co-host, I was talking to him, and he's not really big into rap like you were saying earlier, but he loves what he's hearing from you. And he wanted me to give you a shout out and say, keep it up. You know, it's excellent content.
I said thanks, man. I really appreciate that. Really appreciate that.
I will. Is there anything that you want to leave, any message you want to leave in people's mind more than anything else, like any partying?
I think the overall message that I would have for anybody is to be a skeptic that thinks critically. I think that, to me, a lot of our problems, in society and even our personal lives in general, comes from not being healthy skeptics. Don't just assume that the person knows what they're talking about because they're so passionately and emotionally attached to the idea. Because I have found more so than not, that's a perfect recipe for them not knowing what the hell they're talking about. They're too emotionally attached.
Yep.
So that would be my overall message that I would like to get to people. And if I die today or tomorrow, and people can get to understand that about me, it'd have been all worth it.
Well, thanks for setting some time aside.
No, thank you, man. Appreciate it.
The city's afraid of me. I've seen its true face. The streets are extended gutters, and the gutters are full of blood.
Death speaks. Tombstone Da Deadman.
Hello, humanity. It's your boy Death. I think it's time that we had a little heart-to-heart. There is no afterlife, there's only after death. When you're buried, the burnt maggots come to eat your flesh. Sooner or later, everybody ends the same quest, but you seem in a hurry to hand over your last breath. I think it's sad to see the sickness in humanity. It's like you're fascinated with sick and perverse fantasies. Why romanticize stories of species-wide genocide? Why not just celebrate the limited time you are alive? See, I've been watching you monkeys for many years. Your history's full of deceptive thoughts and red tears. I've reaped the benefits of your murderous ways and laughed. I've even enjoyed the lines about the soul you think you have. You're not morally corrupt, you're just mentally fucked. Evolve big brains, but sometimes complexity sucks, cause it allows imagination this unlimited range. Whether it's Mayan calendars or something equally strange, it's really astonishing you fuckers lasted this long. Another in-world prediction goes hilariously wrong, and there are times I get concerned with the state of global derangement. If you guys are good for nothing, you're certainly entertaining. There is no afterlife, there's only after death. When you're buried, the burnt maggots come to eat your flesh. Sooner or later, everybody ends the same quest, but you seem in a hurry to hand over your last breath. 1925 AD, Joseph Rutherford predicted it's the end we'd see. April 22nd, 1959, Florence Houghton predicted that you would not survive. Surprise, surprise, you're still alive after Gene Dixon surmised that in 1962 the world was out of time. Now fast forward about 5 decades, the same game still being played, but now I shouldn't have to explain. This shit is so lame. Half you mortals have to have your heads up in your asses, while the clever few feed off the gullibility of the masses. So now you got another one? You can't be serious. December 21st, 2012 has got me curious. How many times you gonna keep bumping your head in that wall? How many of you say the next day you didn't believe it all? See, this is getting awkward. I feel you stalking me. I'm serious, you human should really just back up off of me. There was a time your feeble minds couldn't even grasp that I don't even exist for real, dummy. I'm just an abstract. You guys created me, personified was natural, born out of your fear of accepting the things that's actual. I've come to grips that your species is so psychotic, but this is just getting embarrassing, so please stop it. There is no afterlife, there's only after death. When you're buried, the burnt maggots come to eat your flesh. Sooner or later, everybody ends the same quest, but you seem in a hurry to hand over your last breath. There is no afterlife, there's only after death. When you're buried, the burnt maggots come to eat your flesh. Sooner or later, everybody ends the same quest, but you seem in a hurry to hand over your last breath.
Still here? It's over. Go home. Go.